Hey everybody, thanks so much for watching this quick update from a stream that we had a couple weeks ago. We were talking about doing some flowing particles in that stream, and at the end of the stream I wanted to be able to project them onto another piece of geometry using some UVs and things like that. And fortunately it was getting late, my brain kind of just shut off and I couldn't think about the right way of doing it. So here I am, hopefully just setting the record straight, making sure you know how to get to that last kind of stage of this setup. So so let's jump in and see the things that I did to kind of update this. So first of all, one thing that's a little different right now is that these points, I'm using a scatter instead of just the grid that we were looking at before. So before we were looking at just a grid of points like this. And in this case, I now have a just scattered group of points using relaxed iterations from the scatter node. So that'll give us quite a bit more of a random starting location, and then we won't get those crazy lines throughout our simulation as they get moved around. If you didn't join the stream for that, it was from the 5th of July, and so we were talking about using a 2D pyro simulation to be able to push points around using just like a simple pop network instead of using some sort of more complicated velocity setup and things like that. We just did a simple 2D pyro sim, and it was really quick and easy to do. So and it sims really quick, and then after that we did some displacement on it to be able to give it some height and interest after the fact, and that's where this kind of rolling animation is coming from, just a mountain stop kind of pushing the points around. So that was pretty much where we ended it. From there we were able to kind of try a few things, but we didn't really get too far. So let's take a look exactly at what we were doing here in order to make this work. So the first thing that I just want to show that we did was we set a displace attribute, and pretty much all that's doing is saying how far above or below the above or below the y value of 0 it is. So if it's negative y or positive y, that's going right there and getting saved. So from there, we matched its size to a 1x1 grid just to make it kind of a unit grid for being able to map it to the UVs, and then offset it to 0, 0 by just offsetting it by 0.5 in those two axes. And from there, I went to transform it, and originally what I was doing was I was transforming it just in place and just kind of flattening it. But what I actually needed to do was make sure that it was in the X and Y plane instead of just the X and Z plane, because I was just flattening it, and I was thinking that that was going to do enough. So now we have a flattened grid of points here in this XY plane, and obviously it's going to play through the same, and we've got that displace value saved, so that's great. And it'll be able to kind of spit that through the whole time, so we'll have that updated displacement. So we now have those UV space points. I just removed the normal attribute from these just so that we'd be able to copy a normal over from another piece of geometry. So if we look at this other branch here, this is what I started to do. So I've got a couple pieces of geometry in here just to show that it does actually work multiple ways. So here we have a sphere. It's going through a switch, so I can switch it over to a torus in a second. We have a normal on there that will copy over, and then I just auto UV'd it just because if we use like a standard just like projection and added some noise to it, it'll kind of freak out and it'll find multiple places where it has the same UV value, like overlapping UVs, and this method really doesn't like overlapping UVs, so you really need to unwrap your model. But so anyways, so there's our auto UV, and then when we come over here we can see that that snaps right into that spherical position. So what I'm hoping will happen now is if I turn this off and just update those values like this, and then come back down here, yep, sure enough, we've got a deformed geometry that we could work with. Now, if you wanted to do it the way we had it before, where I'll turn this off, this mountain off, and we wanted to bring back the displacement, we do that down here. So here, I just brought over the normal from this this geometry here. So now we have normals pointing outward. One of the most important things was to make sure my sample count was high enough so that it wasn't getting these, like, if I turn this back down to just 1, you'll see it has these kind of like edges here that it's happening because of obviously how the input geometry is. So having it to 6 helps smooth some of those edges out. And then when you go to this step down here, I'll turn those off, we're displacing it back out to the geometry that we had over here. So if you had some very specific geometry that you wanted to displace something back out to, that would allow you to do that. You could also store the displacement as a vector. In this case, we only needed it in one direction. So that was why I was using this normal, because I'm displacing it along that normal, multiplying it by the displacement, and then I also have a scale here that I can kind of adjust. So I could go crazy with it or just a little bit if I wanted to. The only thing you see here is that obviously this isn't kind of looping because it's at the seam, there is a break there. So if you didn't want to do this, set that back to where it was and just turn this off. You could also put noise on this thing too, and that'll push it around. It's gonna really depend on how your UVs are set. You can see here, you see this boundary between the UVs. I believe if you scale, possibly if you scale this match size down just a little bit, if we do this, we might see less of that, but no, not really. I wasn't sure if we'd see a little bit less of that with them being pulled back from the UV space, but nope, not really. So that's okay. I just thought maybe that might just, as I'm recording this, I was thinking that out loud. But anyway, so let's turn this off, and we'll just leave that on for right now. And let's turn the mountain off back again. And then we just switch over here just to prove that sure enough it'll work with either. So here's our auto UV'd like that, but kind of makes a mess of it. So I'm just going to adjust the grain tolerance here, and that should help get us a little better solution, like so. And sure enough, this will animate over it just like that. You'll get some cool flowing geometry. And again, you could displace that out if you wanted to. You could come down here and look at this, but obviously this is going to get kind of goofy if you've got a bunch of seams in your UVs. So, you know, keep that in mind as well. It might be better to do something like this and just kill this displacement here. And so then you can get some kind of interesting results that way. And down here, I'm just going to skip past this. We can see that we have a copy to points, and this will obviously just copy some geometry on there. Just have a simple platonic, but the less UV seams we have, the better, obviously. So you know, kind of play around with it, whatever works best. But having overlapping UVs definitely is not what you would want. So you know, you can kind of play around with these settings. You could obviously do an unwrap yourself and get that to work out quite a bit better, but I just wanted to do something quick and be able to kind of show you how this works and give you some of the ideas behind it. And really, this is all the code that's happening. It's basically just saving the current position here into a vector, and then it's UV sampling the position based on the UV and using the value of current position. So it's looking it up based on the UV and then setting the point position based on that. So kind of a neat little trick. And you can use this with more than just, you know, flowing points like this. I used a very similar technique to do, you know, to take a very basic shape of something like a hat and make it look like it was all made out of knit. You know, it was all a knit hat, like a winter hat, just from a simple model, and then making a pattern of knit loops basically, and then projecting them out onto the geometry like this. So hopefully that is something interesting for you and kind of closes the chapter on that. Yeah, we'll see you soon at the next Houdini Hangout. Thanks for watching.